Never a dull moment in geopolitics as the war in Iran keeps escalating and Europe is being forced to pick a side. First, a little bit about the situation. As we all know, the war was started on Saturday by Israel and the US striking Iran, and Iran retaliated by hitting all neighboring countries in the Persian Gulf, wherever there's American bases, in Kuwait, in Oman. There was a strike in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, and the most recent development is that Israel has actually crossed the border into Lebanon, trying to once and for all deal with Hezbollah, which has been a thorn in their side for quite a long time. The conflict is really spilling out of Iran. It's engulfing the whole region. They have even threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz yet again, and Donald Trump has been forced to increase US presence in the region and to even provide a naval or aerial escort of ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz. China has been forced to give a position because they get a lot of their energy. China has been forced to give a position because they do get a lot of their energy from the Strait. And it's looking more and more likely that this will be a much deeper conflict than anybody anticipated. Trump said that it will be done in 3 to 4 weeks or so, but it actually is looking like it might take a lot longer than that. It's looking likely that Iran was prepared to engulf the whole region in chaos for as long as humanly possible, to apply maximum pressure and to drag out the war as much as possible. Well, this is quite bad news for the European Union, which, I mean, we're not in a great spot right now, especially vis-a-vis energy and especially in terms of security. And being forced to make difficult choices and being forced to deal with energy, supply chain risks and all these things is coming at a really bad time. Gas prices rose with about 28% since the start of the war. A ridiculous number, I know, but estimates suggest that if the Strait of Hormuz is closed for about a month, gas prices could actually double. And then you're going to see some inflation. Then you're going to see some serious stuff go down in the European Union. And the thing is, this is a very serious energy crisis. And it's probably the most serious energy crisis since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And we're not even out of the Russian energy crisis, of the crisis after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So we're doubling up and we're getting having even more issues and even more problems in Europe. And that's probably why the European Union has really struggled to mount some sort of a coherent response to this, because we're also not really involved. I mean, we're not involved to such a degree that the Italian defense minister was stranded. And you know what that means? That means that Italy was not even remotely aware that there was a risk of the US striking Iran at the time. Because, I mean, the Italian defense minister would have been like on the top of the list of people who would have known if that was even likely to happen. So Europe is not at all involved, and yet it's facing serious risk from the region. Friedrich Merz seems to have done a 180 and he's backing US strikes right now. He's going to meet with Trump. He's like talking all this stuff that Europe should get involved on the side of Israel and the US, whereas Emmanuel Macron is a lot more skeptical. He's saying that the strikes against Iran were not in line with international law. Who the hell even, anyway, I'm not gonna say my opinion on international law. Spain also had quite a strong position against the strikes, and it said that Pedro Sanchez, the prime minister, said that he will not allow Spanish bases to be used for strikes against Iran, and in turn Donald Trump retaliated by saying that he will not trade with Spain any longer. There will be nothing to do with Spain on the side of the US. A very interesting development, because I'm not sure how he's actually going to pull it off. Like, he have to stop trading with the European Union because we're a trading bloc. We have single deals. But anyway, as you can see, we're being squeezed from all sides. As a response, also, Emmanuel Macron famously said that he will start increasing the nuclear stockpile and he will stop telling people how big it is, which kind of seems like a bit of a trick to me, because it seems like we're going to make our stockpile a lot bigger, but we're not going to tell you how much bigger. So, you might think there's 1,000 new warheads, but there's actually like 1 or 2. Clever trick. Clever trick. It has to be said. But regardless, Poland actually said that it wants to develop nuclear weapons in some manner, that it needs a nuclear arsenal. And it's gotten so bad that I caught a whiff, and I think you agree with me here, because Europe is not really under like a nuclear threat from Iran. If Iran does something to the European Union, it'll be like singular drone strikes or ballistic missile strikes at the worst case possible, or terrorist attacks in some way through its proxies. So what will we need nuclear weapons for? I mean, they're not going to defend us against that. They're not useful against that. They're for all-out war or invasion. So it sounds to me like we're preparing for aggression from the United States. I mean, I know it's a hard thing to even conceive, but I think that's on the mind of people like Macron who are thinking that the US might actually do something against this. And that's kind of the problem we face right now. The European Union is being hammered on all sides by these geopolitical issues, and it cannot do a single thing against them, and it's being led in by the nose by the US, and we have no capacity. We have nothing we can do. And the thing is, at first I joined in making... You remember when in Saturday the war started and Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, said, we're going to convene a meeting of the Security Council on Monday. You know, the war started on Saturday, but we're going to meet up on Monday. You know, a Eurocrat is never going to interrupt their weekend, you know, ski holiday. If there's a war, we'll deal with it Monday. I've worked in the European institutions, and by the way, that was the most Eurocrat thing I've ever seen in my life. But anyway, besides the point, I made fun of that a lot. A lot of people made fun of that. But then you had to think it was actually the correct attitude, because this is not our war. This is not our war. This is the Israeli and the US war. That's pretty clear, right? A lot of people echoed that sentiment. And you might think that we have to join or whatever, but it really isn't our war. And there's nothing wrong with the position of treating it as not our war. But on the other hand, as I said, we're dependent on these energy supplies from the Strait of Hormuz. We're dependent on trade with the US that requires us right now to push into Iran. We're dependent for our defense. We're dependent on all these trading things. It's not even just oil and gas, by the way. A lot of sugar gets refined. A lot of refined sugar passes through the Strait of Hormuz from the Persian Gulf states. And obviously, you know, there's these attacks on Cyprus. Obviously, there's the fact that Turkey is kind of edging to get involved in this thing. It might actually start with it might invade Iran, or there might be Kurdish groups that start invading Turkey. God knows what's going to happen with Turkey, but that's Turkey, you know, it's a country on the border of the European Union. So all these things are happening even while the invasion of Ukraine is still ongoing, while the war in Ukraine is still ongoing. So it's not like we can afford what Ursula von der Leyen did, you know, just like, we'll deal with it Monday. We can't. We're dependent on these things. We have to somehow get involved in the world. We have to be involved in the world because of the reality of our energy situation, and yet we aren't getting involved. It's looking more and more likely that we will have to mount some sort of a response as the conflict keeps escalating and drawing more countries in and drawing the Persian Gulf countries in. And yet the European Union seems less and less likely to actually mount some sort of a coordinated response or some sort of policy towards the United States that we all follow. It's not just Merz's policy or Macron's policy or this guy or that guy. I mean, I'm not going to give a solution here. I'm just trying to tell you the problem. I'm just trying to tell you the situation we find ourselves in. I'm trying to explain what the conflict in Iran is likely to look like. It's likely to continue much longer than the 4 weeks that Donald Trump gave it and that some of the analysts gave it. So, yeah, their strategy is clearly to apply maximum pressure over as wide an area as possible, to make it more expensive, more difficult, to make it a forever war, to make it less popular. And we're going to find ourselves at the brunt of that. And I haven't even broached the subject of refugees and refugee waves, which is another obviously serious topic. I mean, we are going to have to deal with that at some point. There will be refugee waves. This region is destabilized again. We have to have some sort of response to that as well, right? I mean, we cannot isolate ourselves from the world. Europe cannot afford to isolate itself from the world the way it is. So we do face this choice, and the choices that face Europe right now are several. It's Fortress Europe, it's Federal Europe, or it's every nation for themselves. And to go to, if every nation for themselves, is usually to go to Daddy America and ask them for help and ask them for guidance in some manner. I don't know what's gonna happen. I just know we're paying for years and years of, mistakes of dismantling the nuclear energy sector that makes us so dependent, of making ourselves so dependent on outside trade, of not forming a strong core of European nations, of not forming, some sort of migration or anything policy, and of having the weak leadership that we have right now. In any case, that's what it is. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. I know it's quite brief. I'm not aiming to give you a massive overview of the situation. I'm trying to give the European perspective, and the European perspective is pretty simple, so no need to go that much into detail. It's as simple as it is awful. So thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I would really appreciate a subscribe, because I'm just trying to get the channel off the ground, and every subscribe really matters to the video. Every comment, every like, everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.